So I got this livery online, just found it, looked cool, so I put it on there. This is the first car I've ever looked at in VR Studio. Yeah, so I don't know if I'll be able to describe what I'm seeing here. You're looking at it on a flat screen. I'm in a VR headset. I'm actually on my editor right now, but what you can't see is that you feel like you're sitting there or standing there and looking at this thing in real life. Maybe not perfectly real life, but it's close enough that it tricks your brain sometimes into thinking you're right there. It's pretty cool. So this is the part that really blew my mind. When you're in one of these extremely high detailed models of a car sitting there in VR, your instant reaction is to just reach out and grab the wheel or touch something that's, those little knobs and stuff. It's hard to describe how realistic it looks unless you try it. And maybe for some people it doesn't work, but for me, the first time I saw this, it just kind of blew my mind. Like on a flat screen, this little loop right there, a little red loop, it doesn't even look special at all. It just looks like a 3D model you've seen since 15 years ago, nothing special. But when you put on a headset and look at that thing and it's all 3D and the lighting is hitting it differently for each eye a little bit, it pops out the way that you would think, a 3D TV was supposed to work 10 years ago, but they never did. It just looks so realistic. It's just freaky. It's the only way I can put it. It's just freaky and crazy, and unless you put goggles on and look at it, you're just never going to see it the same way on TV or on a flat screen of any kind, probably. And all this other stuff inside the car, it looks so detailed and realistic. It just tricks your brain into thinking, yep, I'm sitting in this car and it looks amazing for some reason. It even probably looks more amazing than it would if you're actually sitting there, because you're not in it. And you're not in it. But man, everything combined with the goggles and the lighting and the detail, it just tricks your brain, and it's just a crazy experience that's kind of hard to describe, actually. And you can see the foveated rendering working here. You can see when I look to the left, the right-hand side of the screen's all blurry, and you can see when I look to the right, the left-hand side of the screen's all blurry. But you can't see that in the goggles, of course. But I wanted to highlight this little part here. See that Michelin sticker? See how there's a little bit of a sheen on it? And it kind of, it looks good on a flat screen, but with goggles on, man, that thing looks like a tire, and it looks like you're sitting there looking at a tire with a sticker on it. Just how the light bounces off of that sticker, that's different than how it's bouncing off of the tire around it, and the texture they apply, and I don't know if it's bump mapping or I don't know. Who knows what exactly they're doing, but it's just something that's just another thing that you just can't possibly see on a flat screen. There's just no way. It just doesn't translate. And this part was crazy too. This wheel and tire and everything, it looks cool, it looks good, it looks crisp and clear. And, I'm talking on a flat screen, it looks cool. Very highly detailed, nice reflections, nice textures, all that stuff. But when you put on the VR goggles and look at this stuff, you can focus on the reflection on that wheel. And just like in real life, when you look at a reflection, you're focusing it. Now, you're not actually using the focus of your eyes, though. So that might screw some people up, because I can't even focus close up anymore, because my eyes, I'm getting old. And I had laser surgery, over a decade ago, and I can't focus up close. And I think that actually helps me, because if I was trying to focus up on something close in the goggles, I think it would turn blurry, because you don't need to focus in the goggles. To me, it looks like it's set to infinite focus, like a GoPro or something. That's kind of a good example. In the GoPro, if you get up close to something, it's blurry, but everything else, a foot away to infinity is clear. It's kind of like that. But if you have young eyes, and I remember what it's like to be able to focus in on something close, and if you focus in on something close, I think it's going to go blurry. You don't really need to use the focus of your eyes. I think the ability for someone to focus up close would actually hurt their experience in these goggles, because when I put on my reading glasses, everything's a blur. So that leads me to believe that if I had the ability to focus in closer, and I tried to focus in closer on something that I'm closer to, it would just turn blurry. So I don't know how people are dealing with that, because I can't focus in close anymore, so I can't even test it, except putting my reading glasses on, which makes everything terribly blurry. So maybe that has something to do with some of the blurriness people see. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, and you see these LED strips that doesn't look like anything special at all. In the game, on a flat screen, or, even what you're seeing, if you're, obviously you're watching this on a flat screen, it just doesn't look like anything special. It looks like, a piece of plastic around some LEDs and a strip. And it doesn't look special or amazing in any way. But in goggles, I think it's the way the light hits the translucent textures slightly differently, especially on close-up things like this. The way your brain perceives that is that you're just sitting there looking at something, because the head tracking's so good and there's no blur going on. I mean, PSVR2s are really good about that, and there's no smearing or anything like that. So, man, it just tricks your brain so well, and it's crazy. You just can't imagine it unless you try it. I guess that's all you can really say about it. So I know people are like, oh, but the pixels and the blurriness and I get it, because, I understand. I didn't have VR until a month ago, so I completely understand why you're not impressed with what you're seeing on screen. But that's because you're seeing it on screen. I guess that's the best way I can put it. And it's just so hard to convey how much different it is in the goggles than on a flat screen. Even the best flat screen in the world, or the biggest, or whatever. It's so much different that it's like a completely different experience, and a completely different way to experience video games, and probably in the future movies, and who knows what else. But it's I understand what people are talking about now, and before I really didn't. And there's just an insane amount of reflections and lighting going on here, and it just looks crazy and realistic. But you can't even see all the colors and the difference in dark and light, because I'm recording this in non-HDR. And if you were to watch it in HDR, and if I recorded it in HDR and you're watching it on an HDR screen, a pretty good one actually, you'd see the difference in lighting and dark, but you're only seeing one eye. So when both of your eyes are getting different information from the lighting, it adds texture that you can't see with just one eye or looking on a screen. It adds another layer of texture that's probably not even happening anywhere but inside your head. That's what it seems like to me. Like, you take the left-hand screen and the right-hand screen, and they're, different points of view. If you look at either of them, obviously they're different if you switch back and forth. But if you're looking at it in real time, it kind of just adds a whole nother layer of detail that you just can't possibly get on a flat screen. And I think that's why, to me, the close-up stuff, you can really see the three-dimensionality of it. It almost looks higher than 4K to me, because it's taken up so much of your field of view, and it's really crisp. At least when I get the goggles adjusted just right, which isn't really hard for me to do, there is no blur when I'm looking at something, at least in the center of the screen where I'm looking. If I look way off to the side, there's like a weird fringing and blurriness. But then you just turn your head a little bit. It's kind of like if you're in a motorcycle helmet, there's a big glare and stuff on your face shield, and then you got to move your head around a little bit to get around it. And it's like that with if you wear glasses, or if your glasses are fogged up, or you don't always have perfect vision anyways. So that's not a big, huge thing to get around and to work with. Yeah, it'd be nice if it was perfect, but I don't think that even exists anywhere, unless you're like at NASA spending $1 million. I kind of think of it as, okay, let's say you've never seen a big mountain before, right? Because this has happened to me. And you can look at paintings of mountains. You can look at amazing photographs of mountains. You can look at videos of mountains. And until I went to the Grand Tetons, and until I actually sat there and looked at that mountain range with my own eyes, you just can't tell how big and impressive and incredible it is. And I'm not saying this is as good as being there, but it's, if you're looking at let's say you're looking at the best flat screen in the world and looking at it, and you're looking at it with the best VR goggles in the world. And then, you compare that to looking at it with your own eyes, and if you're really sitting there. Well, the difference between a flat screen and VR goggles and actually being there, I would say flat screen is amazing. You can get a whole lot of information in detail, and, you can see it, and your brain kind of makes a 3D image out of it. You just can't help but do that. And in real life, you're there, that's as good as it gets, right? Well, the VR goggles are a lot closer to being there than on a flat screen. Just like, if you look at a picture of a mountain compared to being at the mountain and looking at it with your own eyes, I'd say the VR goggles are about, it's not like I don't know what kind of percentage you can put on it, but it's a lot more like being there than not like being there. And that's just with, computer graphics. Imagine if the computer graphics were extremely realistic, even, 10 times more realistic than this. It would almost fool you into thinking you're there. Of course, you're not. You're in VR, but again, your brain will play tricks on you. And it's like, I can't tell you how many times I just reached out and tried to touch something because it just tricks your brain. And I guess that's the whole cool part about it is it just feels like you're there. It's wild.